Welcome back to another Action Game Maker tutorial. Today I'm going to show you how to receive a signal in your visual scripts. So with that said, let's get started. Alright, so here I am in the Basilot Quest sample project, and I'm going to show you 3 ways to hook up a signal to a visual script. So the first way is going to be through a visual script. So a visual script is going to send a signal to another visual script. And how we're going to do that is I'm just going to select this player here. I'm going to go into this visual script. And let's just say that I wanted an action that goes from any state, and it's going to be if a signal is detected, all right, and then the name will be run. I'm just going to keep this simple. So the name of the signal that I'm looking for is run, and I can also have arguments if I want. You can have numeric, which is floats or integers kind of things, flags, which is a bool, so true or false, and or I guess on or off, a string, which is just text, which is much like this right here. The filter name is a string, so run is a string, or a vector 2. A vector 2 is going to be like an X and a Y position or something like that. All right. So I don't want any argument, and you don't have to have an argument. And so I'm just going to say that I just want the name of the signal to be run to trigger this state. So then I'm going to go into here, and just so that I can quickly reference that in fact it did trigger, I'm going to play the attack animation, and I'm going to stop any movement. So I'm just going to be standing still, and I'm going to be stuck in this state because I have no out state. All right. So that's how we're going to, this is representing what happens when I get the signal. Okay. Now, the first way to do it is within another visual script. All right. So I happen to have this player speed object right here. It has its own script, right? We can click into it and we can see it. And it basically is dictating whether I'm running or not. If I'm holding the shift button and there's some other conditions, then I will run. And if not, then I will not run. And all it does really is it just adjusts my speed. You can see that it just takes my left movement value here and it ups it, okay? So that's really all I'm doing. And then if I'm not running, it does the same thing, except for it just goes back to normal, 150. All right, so that's basically the gist of this. So what I want to do now is send a signal when I am running to my main script. And so how do I do that? Well, we obviously have a emit signal, okay? And remember the name, this is where it's important. The name was run, and I had no argument on it, all right? And I'm gonna click add. And that is simply how you can set that up in the visual script to send. Now the next thing is, and I have a video going over how to send a signal, but this is how you can receive it into another visual script. So you click on the node here, and make sure that this is selected and refreshed. And you can see that we have a run here. This was from a previous attempt here. So basically we have this run here. You're going to select on the run, and you're going to right click and hit connect. And then you're going to go to the player. Now you don't want this to be named this. What you want to do is you want to say pick. And then if these options aren't selected, make sure that you select these options so that you see the actual signal that you want to send it to. You must send it to a receive signal of the visual script object. So then I'm going to click OK, and then I'm going to connect it. All right. So that was simply how I can do it. Now we can play test this, and I can walk around now. So I'm just going to walk around like normal. But as soon as I start to run, I'm going to play an attack animation, and then I'm going to stop. So here we go. There you go. See, I played an attack animation, and now I cannot move. We caught the signal in this other script, and boom, went there. Okay, so this worked well when this object was in the scene. Now, let's say that this object wasn't in the scene. Well, you can still do that. You just would have to do it on the scene itself. So when I set up the player here, let me clean this up a little bit. So let's just say, and you couldn't do it with starting points necessarily. So for the player, this would probably be the best setup in my game, this sample project. But if you had the player out here, you could add another object, and then you could connect the signal still from right here. So you're not just limited to having it in the scene. However, in maybe a player object, you might be, because of how using start points is pretty effective. So yeah, just might need to think about those little caveats there. All right, now moving on to the second method, which is going to be connecting the visual script through a GDScript. All right, so what we're going to do here is I'm just going to simulate that we have a node here, and I'm just going to bring this up here. And what this node is going to do is it's going to hold a GDScript that is going to help me do something in the game custom. All right. So let's add a script right here. And I'm just going to keep it called node just for simplicity, but this would be the script that you're doing. Let's just say that you wanted help detecting if you're on the floor or on the ceiling. Even though we can do that in the visual scripting, let's just give an easy example here. So I'm going to hit create, and then we have this script right here. Now, if we wanted to extend the player function, we would need access to the player. So we could just do something like this. There's multiple ways to do this, but I'm just going to say the player is going to be a game object. And then in the ready is run when the when the scene starts. Ready is run on all nodes, basically. So this node would run this ready as the game starts. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to say that the player is going to equal the owner as game object. Now, the only reason I can do owner is because this node is in the scene. And what owner means is it's going to be the root node no matter where the node is. So if I had owner from this hit collision, which is nested inside this hit, the owner is actually still going to be the player. The parent is going to be the hit area 2D, but the owner is going to be the player. All right. So again, this only works if it's inside the scene. All right. So right here, if I attached it right here and I would say owner, the owner would be the village. Okay. So just to make that point real quick. Okay, so we're on this node and we have this player equals owner as game object. Okay, so now we want to make a signal from this GDScript. So we're going to make a signal, and this is going to be a AGM visual script signal, just call it. And we're going to have a parameter. We're going to have the signal name. This is going to be a string. And then we're going to have a parameter, or however you want to do, or an arg, or something like that. And it's going to be a variant. I think you can use variant. Variant. All right. And this might work, might not. I can't remember. But anyway, the variant, the reason why you put variant here, or it is a variant, is because if we go back to the visual script, we can see that the argument can be no argument, which means nothing, null, basically. Or it could be a number. We've already talked about this, but this is what it's representing. And since it can be any of these kind of different arguments, it has to be a variant because it varies. All right, so back to the GDScript. Okay, so this is our setup right here. And now all we need to do is we need to connect this signal to the player received, like how we did with this node right here. Okay, so how we do that is we simply say the AGM signal, and then we're going to connect it. We're going to connect it to the player. We have to use callable here. The player, and then we're going to connect it to its receive signal thing. And that's basically all that we need to do to connect it. So after this line of code is ran, it is now connected. Now for testing purposes, we need to wait. We need to give this connection at least one frame. So in order to do that, you can just do something really simple like this, where you can get the tree and then you can process a frame. So this is waiting a processed frame. And then what we can do is we can just do a AGM visual scripting. We're going to emit the signal. The signal name is going to be run. This is what the visual script is detecting. And then the argument is going to be null on this one, which means that we don't want an argument on this one. So if we go back, make sure that this is all set up correctly on our script here. We have run null argument right here. We should be able to see the same thing. Right away, I will go, yep, right away it played that attack animation and I cannot move. So that worked. So how can we make this useful? Well, one example that we could do real quick is we could say, we could be detecting if the player is touching the floor. So let's go like this. Let's delete this. And then let's add a function for physics processing in which we can detect some things here. Now we're not going to use delta, so I'm just going to do that, or else it's going to throw a warning down here. It's nothing crazy, just a warning. And what we're going to do is we're going to say if the player dot is on floor, we're going to emit this, we'll just use run, but it could be is on floor. And that's the nice thing about doing it like this, is that you can just name different ones and it's going to use different ones. So you're just connecting to this generic receive signal, and then this is going to be your argument for any one. So you'd only have to do this and this once, but you could have multiple emits of different signals while you're doing this. So we'll say is on floor, and let's just see if this works. The only thing I'd have to do is I'd have to change this to is on floor. And if we are running this now, this should work. If I go up and I go down here, you can see that once I hit the floor, which I know it's top view, but it's still considered floor, you saw him do an attack animation, and now I cannot move. So this is how you could do some custom things, and this was a really quick script to add in there and then to throw in a signal. All right. So now let's just say that we wanted parameters in this. So we would say, hey, you know what? This is going to be a parameter of 1. So whatever that means, but we can see that if we do not have that argument selected, it will not run. So I could go back up here and hit the floor right here and notice that it will not run. Now, the one interesting thing about GDScript, and let's just see if it will work here, is, it won't work here because the arguments, but I could just show you. So while I'm playtesting, I can change this to null, and I can save it. Then I can go back into playtest, and you can see that it will trigger. So you can kind of hot load your GDScripts. Just wanted to show you that real quick. But now I want to show you that if we set this to 1, we would have to numeric code this to 1. It has to equal 1, or there's some greater than, stuff like that. And then, boom, now it would trigger. Okay, so that is the second way to do this. I'm sure you can already think of ways that you can use this. So now there is one other thing that I want to show, and that is how to connect the default signals from Godot. And how I'm going to do it is I'm going to show you with the GDScript way first, and then I'm going to show you the third method that I want to show you, which is a super easy way that I've made for it. So first with the GDScript way. So typically what this is really nice in is, let me get this set up differently right there. Yeah. Okay. So what this is really nice in, for example, is a button. All right. So I'm going to add a button, and then I'm going to bring it up here and have it right here. Now, this button is just going to be a whatever button. I'm going to move it right here, do this, and just call it button. Doesn't have to look good. Doesn't have to be whatever. I'm just going to leave it like that. Okay. So how do we use this signal of pressing it? Because it has a default signal of pressing it. How do we use that with the GDScript or with the visual script? Because we can't just connect it. We can't connect it like this to the received signals because it doesn't have the proper arguments or setup for it. So there's two ways to do it. So this first way, since we're on GDScript, let's do this. So the first way we could do is we could connect it to the GDScript. A couple ways to connect it, but this way is a good way. So you can connect it to that GDScript, okay? And now, boom, you have this. So whenever it's pressed, it's going to run this function. And then what we could simply do is we can say, see if I still have it. Yeah. So AGMaker via script, we emit. We're going to emit run, and then it's going to be null. So this one, we would actually say the button for this thing is going to be the signal that it sends. So now we're going to go to the visual script, and we would just want to make sure that this signal detecting is going to be this, and we don't have an argument particularly in this one, in this case. But as soon as we click this button, it's going to then send it to this GDScript, and then this GDScript is going to send it to the visual script. So kind of a lot going on there, but that's one way you can connect the default signal. So if I click button, you can see it attacked. I cannot move. It worked. All right. So that is kind of a more complicated system, I would say. So now I want to show you how you can do the third way of sending signals, particularly default signals, to visual scripts. And this way is something that I created, actually. So we can get rid of the node here. We don't need the node anymore. We don't need a intermediary as far as a script that you have to make. I'm going to also disconnect the pressed button for this. So we have this button. We want it to go to the visual script. So I've made a add-on, and it's called Baz Signal Relay. Guild website, you can see on the plugin section, there's a signal relay. You can click on it, download it. You'll see an add-ons folder. You can just take the whole add-ons folder into the root of your project. You can see right here, this is where you want it. And it's just going to add it. So you might have other add-ons in here. It's just going to add this folder to it, basically. So once you put that in, you don't have to mess with anything in there. It's just a simple thing for you. Now, you would go to the player or whatever you want it, and you would then click to add a child node. And in this case, just type in Baz, and it will simply pop up as Baz Signal Relay. You can add this. Now, it's very important. You want this as a child to whatever node that you want the custom signal from. Okay, so I added it to my button so that way it would work correctly. And then we can go to the inspector here, and you can see that we have a few different things right here. The Action Game Maker object, so you can quickly just drag in, oh, whoops, can't do that, I guess. So we could just click on this, and it would be, we have a couple options here. It's definitely the player that I want this signal to go to. And then we have relay configuration, basically. So we're going to add an element here. It's going to be a new Baz Signal Relay. And then here we have the parameters that we need to understand. So the parent signal name that we want to send is, in fact, pressed. So we would go back to this, and we would type in pressed. And then this is going to be the Action Game Maker signal filter name that you want. So you don't want it to be the same as this because there's a lot of buttons with press. Let's say you're making a menu and all of them have pressed. You're going to want to differentiate it. So this one is going to be, I mean, just simply the button above head press. You know, something understanding like that. Okay. And then, so this is going to be the one that we want. So I'm going to copy this one. And then there's going to be argument types, if any. So this argument index, there are some signals that come with arguments. I don't know, this one does, for example. This is the Baz Signal Relay, so every node has this replacing by, which comes with the node, all right? Let's go to the button more particularly. So this button has a toggled, and the toggled on is a bool. So if you wanted to use that argument, you could now use it in this configs right here. So what you would have to do is you'd have to know which index you want to use because some have multiple objects. So indexes start at 0. So if I wanted to use the toggle, I would need to choose 0. And then I would come down here and I would select that it's a flag because it's a bool. All right. And I just stuck with Action Game Maker name. So you would select flag, and then that would basically use that argument if you wanted to. But I'm just going to say there is no argument in here, and I have pressed. It's called button above head pressed. I'm going to copy this. Now the only real thing that I got to do next is I got to go to this one right here and make sure that the name is the button above head pressed. And then when we play test this, I can now click on the button and it will send me to that state. Can't move, play the attack animation. All right. So I did this because it's a more visual way. You don't have to get into code. You're used to creating these resources through Action Game Maker, so it's a little more understandable. And you can also save these and reuse them. Just that's the one nice thing about having this resource method is you can just reuse them. And then if you have one slight change, you can just go back to the one, rechange it, and it affects all. Anyway, I hope this is useful. It's free to use and all that stuff. So yeah, go ahead and give it a try. If you have any questions, you can comment below. You could go to the forums, Discord, we'll get you figured out. And with that said, I'll see you at the next video.